Badarayanam Sutrabhashakritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bhed Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Gokarastvandakaro Vai Rukarastvanivartakaha Andhakar Nirodhitvat Gururithyabhidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namah Shri Shankarananda Guru Padambujanmane Padambujan Savilasa Mahamoha Graha Grasaika Karmane. So let's see which verses we should chant. Let's chant verses 13, 14, and 15. Number 13. Pratibandhosti bhatiti Pratibandhosti bhatiti Vyavahararhavastuni Vyavahararhavastuni Tam nirasya viruddhasya Tasyotpadanamuchyate Tasya hetu samanabhihi Tasya hetu samanabhihi. Oh, just sorry, there's no bhihi. Tasya hetu samanabhi Tasya hetu samanabhi Haraf putra dhvanishrutau Haraf putra dhvanishrutau Ihanadiravidyaiva Ihanadiravidyaiva Vyamoha ekanibandhanam Vyamoha ekanibandhanam Chidanandamaya Brahma Chidanandamaya Pratibimba Samanvita Pratibimba Samanvita Tamorajaf Satyaguna Tamorajaf Satvaguna Prakritir Dvividha Chasa. So please appreciate the level of teaching that the Panchadasi represents. And as I had mentioned to you at the very beginning of this course, I characterized it as an advanced introduction. So advanced introduction means that the introduction itself, which is kind of like the basics, were covered in Tattva Bodha or some other books, not only Tattva Bodha, but other books also. But the one we are familiar with is Tattva Bodha. But then this is the next level up. And what do I mean by that? This means that there's some commentary on the basics. some different aspects about the fundamentals of Vedanta, which is being pointed out by Swami Vidyaranyaji, and so we need to appreciate that. So, what he is working with, the concepts he's working with at this time, which we have been seeing now for the last few classes, is that the aviveka, meaning not being able to distinguish between truth and untruth, occurs at various levels. So Atma has three basic aspects to it, which is Satyam, that it is, there is some isness to Atma, isness to the whole world. Then the Jnanam, there is some cognition, some knowledge, some consciousness aspect to it, and also that it is not without complete joy, not just an academic exercise. Really, the what we are after in our life is joy, and when it occurs in a very obvious way, we are very happy about it, either through eating or through some relief of things or so on. We are happy. We are all familiar with it. So the very quest of the joy is also one of the aspects of the Atma, and there also there is aviveka. So there is aviveka in all three levels, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, or Sat, Chid, Ananda, in all three of them. So for example, look at Sat, at the level of Sat. So when we say that when I was young, just take the snippet of this sentence, when I was young, and then you can fill in the blank, so on and so forth. So the aviveka at the Sat level is very obvious in this snippet of a sentence, when I was young. How? What do you mean by that? Because in the sentence, when I was young, both the unchanging and the changing are mixed up together as a single ball of wax. And I don't think much about it. It looks like a perfectly intelligible, perfectly rational, truthful statement. We all say that. When I was young, or anything like that. Just yesterday I saw something like this. In other words, with respect to the time. So with respect to the time, here's what happens. So you're mixing up I with my changes in my experience or my situation or whatever. Here you were saying when I was young means I'm no longer young. So you're changing the young youth versus old age. So this is the change. And you are mixing it up with when I was young, meaning that I was the one who was young, and I still remain the same as I'm old, but somehow you could not link it. If it is not mixed up. So really speaking, when you say I, it means it is unchangeable. But you take a snippet of the I, which is unchangeable, and you mix it with the snippet of the I, which is changeable. So this is called the basic aviveka. Aviveka. And the fact of the matter is that, it is okay to talk like this and to experience like this, but from a Vedantic standpoint, I was never young, and I was never not young. I cannot be changed with respect to time. So your body was young and your body is no longer young, and you're now imposing yourself on yourself. So this then becomes an aviveka at the Sat level. And So the basic methodology for us to do some vichara, some thinking, is each of my experiences, each of my pronouncements, each of my conclusions have to be very carefully thought about. And my goodness, I cannot. I have to do a viveka between the changing and the unchanging. And until I do, I'm not going to be free. So now we have a situation where aviveka is being dealt with at various levels. And even in this book, for example, on the very beginning, the aviveka was being done at the consciousness level, if you recall. Number 2, Sabdas Parshadayaha Vedyaha Vaichitriyat Jagare Prithak Tato Vibhaktaha Tat Samvit Ekarupyat Na Bhidyate. So there we pointed out, Swamiji pointed out, Swami Vidyaranyaji, that listen, please see that the samvit remains the same. So when you say I saw a pot and I saw a person and so on, so there an object and a person keep on changing, but I saw doesn't change. So this is, we just take it for granted, and then we mix up the change and the non-change as one wool of wax. So this is at the consciousness level. And then we have to extend it to say, does samvit ever change? Can I challenge this statement that the samvit doesn't change? I cannot challenge it. So he keeps on saying it. Tatha swapne atra vedyam natu sthire jagare sthiram, etc. Then sabodhaha vishayat bhinnaha na bodhat swapna bodhavat. Then the interesting number 7, masa abda yuga kalpeshu gatagamyeshu anekadha na udeti na astameti eka samvit esha swayam prabha. And when does samvit ever change? In years, lifetimes, the whole yuga, nothing changes. It's the same. I know. And the I knownness is something which is intrinsic to me. It is not something borrowed. If it was borrowed, then the borrowings can change. But this is me. This is the viveka at the samvit level. Then the same logic was started at the ananda level. In number 8, iyam atma paramananda parama premaspadam yataha mana bhuvam hi bhuyasam iti prema atmani ikshyate. Anyway, I won't go through all of that. So now an interesting subtopic was begun. The subtopic is, so just to reiterate, that there is aviveka at all levels. Sat level, chit level, and ananda level. But the funny thing is that the effects of viveka at the ananda level takes a longer time. It is our own experiences. Many of us that have been studying Vedanta for a long time, we feel that we can understand the differences, but it doesn't translate into my experience of Swatmananda all the time. All the time. Hey, it's interesting. I remember having a dialogue with Swami Chinmayanand. I mean, that was so long ago and didn't get into a lot of details. But because I followed him for 2 years before I met Swami Dayanand, he was my teacher. And so some dialogues still stick in my mind. And I remember asking him a question, very interestingly. I said, Swamiji, it is my experience, and already 2 years had passed by when I was following him, and I was completely, it was a big, major change in my life. So this is Swami Chinmayanand. So I said, Swamiji, what I find is that as a result of the study, I am able to withstand any major problems, which used to perhaps floor me before. Some unexpected happening and so on and so forth. I didn't know what reference I had, but it was a conclusion on my part. And I said, the funny part is that some small irritants still bother me. So I asked him, why is that? I still remember that. No one asks intelligent questions all the time, and no one. But I kind of said, this is something that I need to ask him. And he took that pretty seriously. I remember that. He said, that's a good question. He says, that does happen. Does happen. And I think the answer that he gave was that somehow when you have a major problem, your response is very forceful, and it takes the help of the teaching that you have already has gotten. And so you are able to forestall it. But in small irritants, your recall and your response is casual. And so you let small things bother you. So he says, this is not unusual. I remember that in talking to him. Anyway, coming back to this topic, in the Ananda, so here Swami Vidyaranya is embarking on a subtopic which we said last time also, if you recall, and continuing on, embarking on a subtopic, why is it that the results of the attempt to do viveka between Atma and Anatma at the Ananda level is so difficult? How come I don't get the results of this? And I can say that this is true because for those of us that have been studying Vedanta for a long time, I can just tell you this very frankly and personally, the fear of death and the fear that I will no longer exist doesn't bother at all. It's gone. Gone. Doesn't even think about that. It's not that difficult to do. I think many people who don't even know. I remember talking to my mom sometime, and she was, of course, a very, very religious person, not spiritually very wise, but not a student of Vedanta or anything, but she was a very religious person. And I used to have a conversation with her, and she used to say, Vijay, I don't have any doubts that I will continue to live. My only question is, what will I be doing? Where will I be? Where will I be born? So this is a person who is what I would consider to be a non-scholar. She had not gone through this and so on and so forth, but yet she was very absolutely pakka that I'm going to live. No question about that. And it is very interesting that people that are born in India, in general, I was talking about, you just take 1.2 billion people and you just pick out one random person, some villager who has not even completed, can't even write his own hand, and you ask him, what do you think about God and your next life? He says, I don't have any doubts. I tell you, this is not an ordinary thing. To be born in India, and you don't require any education or anything like this. Everybody generally, they may have some doubts about it. I don't know what, and so on and so forth. The only exceptions to this are these communists. foolishest people in the whole world. And the rest of the world has forgotten about communism. Now it is only left in India. Just amazing. And Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says, these guys are so foolish, so strange. They hate to see somebody else richer than themselves. So they said, if everybody is poor, we should have the same amount of misery all over. Anyway, so leave aside communists and some exceptions. In general, people have no aviveka towards, they don't know how. That's a different thing. But their belief system is that I'll be there. And when you are there, the chit also goes along with it. You cannot be there without the chit also. Satyam and jnanam also has to be there. So what I'm saying is that out of all the avivekas, the two elements are not that difficult to do. Ananda is a problem. Why? Why is it a problem? Why does it take a little longer time? So that is a subtopic that Vidyaranya is pointing out, and we've already started on that. We will continue on today. I just wanted to set the stage for that. So I just borrowed this from some other areas that I was reading from Swami Maheshananji. So there, the lack of viveka about this Swarupananda of myself as an Ananda, which is what Swami Vidyaranya is saying, means that the feeling of joy is fleeting and what is called paroksha. It is a paroksha jnanam. Paroksha jnanam means that ananda comes from outside of me. And I have to do something. I have to have a nice dessert after dinner to have ananda. This is what an interesting thing, we should have a nice meal which is necessary, because otherwise without a meal we will go hungry and we will starve, and which is not good. But then after that we need to have a dessert. That's not needed. In fact, it becomes sugar in your bloodstream. But we also feel that, and why? Because ananda is cheap. When you have it is, and this temptation to have ananda is very big. So, but there, what I said earlier was that the ananda of eating dessert is paroksha, means where it comes from, I'm not sure. It happens to me when I am ananda, but where it comes from is not sure. But only when that ananda becomes aparoksha, that is when the viveka will be complete. Until then, it is a relative aviveka, the lack of discrimination. So now, we can now go back to the main topic we were discussing, which is that why is ananda so difficult to see as my own nature? So let's follow this on a step-by-step basis. In the answer to that, Swami Vidyaranya leads us through the process. We should appreciate it. At the very beginning, he says that please see that the lack of ananda is due to a pratibandha, due to an obstruction. This statement is very important. Very important. Why is it important? Because it is exactly like you have some problem with your eye and you can't see very well, and you go to an eye doctor full of trepidation, and my gosh, what is going to happen to me? I may grow blind or what? And you go to the doctor and he looks at it very carefully and he says, have you ever heard of cataract? So he says, yeah, I sort of heard of that. That's what you have. What do you mean by that? That's what you have. He says, this is no big deal. Because this is kind of a language, I'm not also completely sure, but some kind of a film that we will yank out and you'll be okay. So the cataract is an obstruction. And why is that an important statement? Because what it says is, your eye is okay. And what you are seeing is also okay, but there is some film in between them. And you cannot call it an obstruction if your eye has a disease. So the basic structure of the eye is okayness. But you cannot say that it's an obstruction if you have some generic problem in the eye. So therefore, the difficulty of seeing the Swarupanandatvam of the Atma, that it is my own very nature, Ananda Aspadam, is what was said in verse number 8 or 9 or something. Aspadam, it is the very source of Ananda. And so the source of Ananda not being able to see is because of an obstruction, pratibandha. This is a very significant statement. So the significance of this statement is that you should go with the logic that you really are. I am telling you, this is like a doctor who's a specialist. So the statements of the Shruti are like a doctor who has examined your state situation. You go to someone and say, sir, I have an unhappy life. Why is that? It's just like saying, I can't see. What is my problem with my eye? So the Shruti says, you don't understand that there is an obstruction. You are okay. Really? Yes. So you have to have Shraddha that this is the way to do it. It's not like saying, this is the way you are. There's nothing else you can do. Just, what is it? Tolerate it if you cannot change it. What is the statement?
Enjoy it.
Huh?
Enjoy it if you cannot change it.
No, it says, there's another statement like that where you say, what cannot be done just or something like. It's not like that. Oh, you're okay, but yes, we do know that you cannot see it. It's an obstruction. And so then the example was given about the fact that if you have a child who is in a choir, and so very beautiful examples there about the desires. You cannot have a desire unless you know something about it. If you have complete knowledge of it, you cannot have a desire. So you have a partial knowledge about yourself, partial ignorance or partial knowledge. Very much like if you have a child who is in a choir. So it's not as though you don't hear your voice of your child, because he or she is, you can see the lips moving, and if you go close to her or him, you'll see, yes, they're talking, but you cannot distinguish it. So the fact of the matter is that because of the unisonness of the voices of all of them, it obstructs the clear knowledge of your child's voice. So this was given. So here, and now we're going to proceed further. What is the thing that obstructs me from knowing my Ananda? So here, before we go into that, a doubt can come in, should come in. These are the kind of questions that one should have. Really, all the top students who are really thinking, they should have these kinds of questions, but we don't. So we just give you the question. It's like saying, please ask me the following question. We suggest it to you, and then we give you the answer on top of that. Here, Swami Dayanandji used to say that. He says, you know, it's interesting that in Shankaracharya tradition, what they do is they appoint a boy. It's never a girl, it's always a boy. So they appoint a young boy who they think has a very good personality, born well, Brahmana family, and then has the right personality and so on and so forth. Then and so the older Shankaracharya spent some time with the young Shankaracharya, and then finally makes up. This is how the Panchan Lama and the Dalai Lama is also chosen the same way. Something similar to that. It happens at many places. So in the Shankaracharya, they feel, okay, this is the guy. This is it. He may be like 12 years old or something like this, but you say he's the future Shankaracharya. So now it is said, Shankaracharya is one who is an avatara of Shankara. And therefore, you cannot teach the Shankara's avatara because he's supposed to be already well realized and so on. So this is just a way of doing. So what they say is that the Shankaracharyas ask him to sit on the side, and they teach the common people. That it is really meant for the Shankaracharya. But you don't look at him like he says, did you get that? No, you're just supposed, and this is how it is teaching is done. So this is the situation that we have, is that you need to ask some really pointed questions. And so that is the, anyway. So one of the questions that comes up is, wait a minute. I can see that I cannot hear the voice of my child because of an obstruction. This I see. But how is it that you can translate that I myself cannot experience my ananda? You see the question. Because if it is a experienced division, there I can see the value of the obstruction. But here I am the experiencer and I'm also the experienced. How can there be an obstruction between them? This should be a valid question in your mind. This should occur to you. The answer to that is, it's possible. And this is where the 10th man example becomes very useful. As you know very well, the 10th man example, that he forgot to count himself as the 10th person and therefore thought that the 10th person was lost. This was the question. So he himself is the 10th man, and he himself thinks that I am lost. So what happens is, this is one interesting thing to see here is, it's not as though he doesn't know that I am alive, I am a boy, 18 years of age, and I am the son of so-and-so, and I'm all of those kinds of things he knows very well. So 99% things about himself he knows very well. The 1% he doesn't know is that the missing person that I am looking for is really myself. So it's not as though So you see, this is an interesting example of, what, that you have some clarity about yourself and some non-clarity. And in this case, the 99% clarity about yourself is useless. Useless. Why? Because you think that I'm lost. Not I am lost, but the person is lost. And therefore it's causing you a great discomfort. You can imagine if a person who was under your watch disappears, you can imagine what your situation will be. So it is possible that even though it is the same person, because of certain ignorance about a fact, you discount everything about yourself. He was not only not a normal person, he was an extremely unhappy person. I read somewhere, there are different ways of giving the same story, and I read somewhere, which is very, very good, I thought, is that this person was so unhappy that he started banging his head against the bark of a tree and bled himself because he wanted to commit suicide. That, my God, my teacher told me, don't go, that take care of all these people, and I let him down. It's almost like I killed him. So his mental state was awful. And yet so you can imagine, not only was he not enjoying his normal ananda, it all went out of the window. So therefore the answer is that the obstruction, which is in this case lack of knowledge about himself, that I am that person who I was looking for, is the obstruction. So it is possible that the obstruction about myself can create a mental state in which I am not happy. This is the step by step. And so this will be expanded now in the 14th verse, which is new for us. So up till now it was really more like a revision. So let's look at verse number 13 one more time, and then we will go forward. So in number 13 he says, I don't know, did we ever do 13? We did do that, isn't it? Oh. Yeah, we didn't complete it. Anyway, so he says, so pratibandha asti bhati iti vyavahara arha vastuni tam nirasya viruddhasya tasya utpadanam uchyate. So let's look at the English translation of that. With respect to a given thing available for transactions, for dealing means, for vyavahara means for transactions is a better word than dealing. Available for transactions as is and is known, then having completely negated that feeling that it is and it is not, that it is and it is known, the production of whatever that is contrary to it, that is called an obstruction. Very simple example. It's nothing, it's just the simple logic, which says obstruction means that you don't see the thing as it is. That's all it is saying. This is number 13. So he is laying the foundation of a series of verses where this will be expanded, as we will see from now on. So then he says that in number 14, tasya hetuhu samana abhiharaha putra dhvani shrutau iha anadihi avidya eva Vyamoha eka nibandhanam. So let's look at the English translation. If you want, you can look at the word meanings separately. That'll be good. But let's just look at the English translation. That with respect to the audibility of the sun's voice, the cause of obstruction is the simultaneous chanting with many others, as we have seen. Yes? Yep. Whereas, so this is the illustration, this is the example. What is exemplified is that the main cause of the erroneous knowledge that I am not Ananda, the erroneous knowledge that I am not Ananda all the time. I mean, I'm Ananda subject to some experiences, but my basic nature is not Ananda. That's what we are really trying to do. That my basic nature should be discovered to be Ananda itself. That I don't know. Occasionally I get Ananda, this much I know. That is called Parokshananda. But the Aparokshananda I don't know. And the reason for my not knowing that I am Aparoksha Ananda is Anadi Avidya. Anadi Avidya. So first of all, it is avidya. Vidya means that the basic obstruction about my Satyam Ganam Anantam, Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnatvam, that I am complete, I don't lack anything. Satyam Jnanam Anantam, I am Anantam, Satchidanandaha, Shantam Shivam Sundaram, all of those kinds of things. That I don't see. And the reason that I don't see is ignorance. Ignorance. Just like in the 10th man, the reason I don't see that I am a happy person, everything is going well. Just as the picnic was supposed to be, this is going well. The reason I don't see is that I have an ignorance that I am the 10th man. There's an ignorance about myself. So now the focus of the discussion about why I cannot see myself is an ignorance. So this ignorance will be now explored further. The first thing about the ignorance is, when did it begin? How did it happen? What is the cause of the ignorance? These are the basic questions in my mind. So the very first one he answers is Anadi Avidya. Anadi Avidya means it never began. It always has been. Really? Always has been? How is that possible? In fact, the curve of, if you were to draw the curve of ignorance, then it will never begin at any time. It can end at any one time, but the beginning is infinity. How is that possible? So there our acharyas say, just look at for yourself. Somebody comes in and then, someone knocks on the door, which is very possible. And I looked at it and says, oh, come. And it turns out it's unlikely that will happen, but supposing it is my brother. My brother already knows that I teach and he doesn't come here. So he's not likely to suddenly pop up. But supposing, or a friend or something. And so my brother comes in. So I introduce himself, this is my brother. And so it says, everybody says, oh, that's good. Then I ask yourself, so somebody, you might even say, it's interesting. You might say, oh, I've seen him before. I didn't know that he was your brother. It also can happen. You can say that. You can say, oh, I've seen him around. He's the same person. I didn't know that he was your brother. So now I can ask him that. When did you not know that he was my brother? So you'll say, this is a stupid question. I never knew that he was your brother. So I said, no, but it must have sort of begun sometimes. No, because if you knew he was my brother, the ignorance will never arise. So ignorance is always there in the air, but it drops dead once you accost it with the right conditions. And also, words are very important. Experiences may not be. Experiences may not be. Swami Dayanandaji gives this very example. I'm sure Neela would remember it, and others also, that he was actually traveling once from, I think somewhere from south to New Delhi. He was flying to go to Rishikesh. And sitting next to him was a Western gentleman who was quite hefty. And he was taking half of the seat of Swamiji also. Those arm rests and so on. So he was taking, because he had to. He was a big guy. He was from Australia, I think. And so throughout they were talking. How are you? Where are you from? And this, that, or the other. And this is a real case. And so they were talking about, my name is such and such, and I've been very interested in Vedanta, and so on and so forth. So Swamiji also said, I'm also a teacher, and so on and so forth. So he says, where are you going? He says, I'm going to go to Rishikesh. And he said, and so by this time they had a meal together. This guy was maybe non-veg, Swamiji was veg, and so they had talk, they had experiences and so on. And they were touching each other. They were touching each other because Swamiji had to, there's no other space. And then so this person said, Swamiji said, where are you going? He says, I'm going to meet with a Swami who I've heard a lot about. And I'm really anxious to meet him because my friend from Australia had told me about this person. He says, really? What's his name? He says, his name is Swami Dayananda Saraswati. Swamiji says, what a funny situation. That he has now experienced me. And he might have even talked about Vedanta. It's very possible. I don't know. All of the things he was experiencing. But a simple introduction was missing. So similarly here also in the 10th man example, same thing. That it's not as though he didn't know himself, his name, his age, his status, if somebody asked him, please tell me all about yourself. He could have spent hours describing it. But there was one thing that was missing, which made all the difference about his self-assessment. This is the nature of ignorance. And it never begins. And in fact, this is a fact that you should be very clear about. That you as an individual never began. Never began. You've always been there. And I'm not even talking about you as an Atma. Atma is independent of time. Atma is independent. It has nothing to do with time. It's an entity where time doesn't, you don't need time to evaluate Atma. It has nothing to do with it at all. Just like space has nothing to do with time. So I'm not talking about Atma. I'm talking it at about you as a jivatma. As a jiva. As a jiva, you are beginningless. As a jiva, you've had a doubt and an ignorance about yourself forever. You've always been there in some form or the other. The form may take the result of the karma, and you keep on changing your forms because of the karma phala. That's a separate issue altogether. But as an entity, as a jiva, you have been distinct, so-called distinct from Ishvara. And he will talk about all of this. Forever. As a person, you have been there forever. In the Dakshinamurti Stotram, as you know, we have this very famous statement. The Dhyanam. Remember those of you that were studying Dakshinamurti Stotram before we started this, we interrupted it after one verse. We still have to go 9 more. So as the sadhana, as the prayer for that, we said, Chitram vatataru mule vriddha shishya gurur yuva gurostu maunam vyakhyanam shishyastu chinna samshaya. So there he says that sitting at the bottom of the tree, there is a young person teaching, and surrounded by some very old swamis, rishis. And the vyakhya was mauna vyakhya, just sitting quietly. This is what we were studying in the Mandukya. Remember, I was telling you about Swamiji's classes, where in the satsang, and for those of you that have been with Swamiji, there will just be quietness. Mauna vyakhya prakatita parabrahma tattvam yuvanam. So the vriddha shishyas means anadi shishya. How old were they? Really speaking, it's interesting. If our bodies did not change, you will be like, we can't even say, how will you express 20 billion years? Imagine a body 20 billion years. Even that may be this very infinite, gnarled body. So Ishvara also is very kind. He says, I think you should get a new, just like we wear clothes that are so, sometimes it's interesting, I have a kind of like a dressing gown that I wear at night time or when I wake up, which I bought from Macy's like 25 years ago. And it's gotten spots and it's got all this, so on and so forth. But I kind of like it. It's mine. In fact, a very funny thing happened. Just last year, I decided I'm going to get a brand new one. So I called the manufacturer, and so they sent me a brand new one, similar looking. Unfortunately, it is extra large. And so I have to fold my things, and it's a bother. So I called them up and I said, this is extra large. I wanted a medium. I'm sorry, I'm going to return it. They said, we are out of stock. So now, actually, I'm very happy wearing the old one again because it fits me. So Ishvara is very kind that he gives you a new body once in a while. He says, start again. Continue your search with a new body. So, anadi avidya. Avidya is, there's no beginning to it. It's been there forever. So now, having established that the main pratibandha is avidya. So just like the similarity of voices is the pratibandha in the case of the choir, here not knowing who you were is the pratibandha. So this topic is now taken up And this will be continued on. So let's move on to number 15. Chidanandamaya Brahma Pratibimbat Samanvita Tamorajav Satyagunaha Prakritihi Dvividha Chasa. So, Ya Chidananda Brahma Pratibimba Samanvita, one which is endowed, one which is united or endowed, either one is okay, or some other words also. Samanvita means becoming one with the reflection of Brahma, whose nature is Chit and Ananda, Chidananda. Then Tamo Rajas Sattva Gunaha Sa Prakritihi Sa Dvividha Cha Sa. They're kind of difficult to do anyway. So let's just look at the English translation, and then again you can please try to do Anvaya and so on. I won't do that here. So he says, the one that is endowed with the reflection of Brahman, whose nature is Chit and Ananda, and which is now composed of the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, is called Prakriti. That Prakriti is of two types. And also one more. This will come later on. It's a little confusing about and one more, but let's just say of two types for the time being. Okay. So here now it gets a little more subtle to see because you're going to cover a lot of ground. But let me now open up the commentary by Swami Maheshananji. Okay. So the first thing that is being talked about here, let's see how much time we have. So about 20 minutes. Okay. Yeah, I think we can cover this. You know, one thing I might do, let me bring in another aspect of this word, pratibimba. So this aspect of the creation, pratibimba, is talked about in the 6th chapter of the Panchadasi. I think verse number 220, 225, which I'm studying. I've been studying for the last several mornings. Beautiful, excellent. So let me give you a somewhat of an incomplete picture of the pratibimba and somewhat unrelated to this, but still very useful to see the word pratibimba. So pratibimba means a reflection. It means a reflection. Bimba means the person standing in front of a mirror, and pratibimba is the reflection of the person in the mirror. Okay? So it is given in our Shastra that in the very beginning of this kalpa, of this 50 million years or whatever, I can never remember the exact one, when there was the day of Brahmaji to begin the entire world, it starts this. It's exactly like the day of you and I after a night's sleep. And all that happens is that in your and my case, someone is sleeping and someone is awake. Like if we are sleeping, the Indians are awake. When they're sleeping, we are awake. And even while you and I are here, some of you may be awake, I may be sleeping. So there is a mixture of sleep and so on. But in the case of pralaya, so this is an interesting thing, sleep is called laya. Is laya. And the macro sleep is called pralaya. Prakarshena laya. Means everyone is asleep. There's no India, no US, no sun, no this. It is just laya completely. But no disappearance. Not a disappearance. It is just like, for example, you and I don't disappear when we are asleep, but we become non-functional. And then, so we are still go into our karana sharira. So in the karana sharira, the bijavastha, all of the seed form of who we are is still there. And now that seed, all it does is somebody wakes me up and the whole seed sprouts again. I become, oh, I'm so and so. Now Monday I've got to go to office. All of those things happen. So similarly in the pralaya, it doesn't disappear. It just becomes prakarshena laya. Everything is brought into a seed form. Then, and this is what I want to convey in the terms of pratibimba. So we will take this up in great detail in some other context, but this is too detailed for this chapter, so I'll just make a quick mention about it here. So when the day of Brahmaji starts, so there is a thought in the form of, may I now become many. Because right now there is advitiyam, ekam eva advitiyam. It is just like even in your case, in my case, when we are asleep, we have no anekata, we only have ekata. We have no differentiation. There is not even, you can't even tell that I am undifferentiated. Only when you wake up later on you say I was undifferentiated. But at that time you were completely undifferentiated. So similarly here also, Ishvara. So the thing is that Ishvara is never asleep. Ishvara is never asleep, but his creation is asleep. So the thought of Ishvara is, may I now become many. And the manyness of the creation of Ishvara is not arbitrary. It is on the basis of the karmas of the people who are sleeping. So, similarly, when you wake up, you and I wake up in the morning, we have an anuvritti from the previous day. So if we were 50 years old, we just celebrated our birthday, now it is we are 50 years and 1 day older. So there is actually a connection between this and the other. So similarly on the Mahapralaya also, there is in fact a anuvritti of the previous kalpa. And according to that, all of the karmas of the people become awake again. And the whole life slowly starts to manifest itself. This is what happens. Now, this is the reason I'm bringing this rather elaborate thing on to explain pratibimba. So what happens is that in the very beginning of the kalpa, the objects of the world in the form of the Panchamahabhutas are manufactured, remanufactured. Again, they were there before. It's the same Akasha, Vayu, Agni, etc., Prithvi, etc. Same one. but they have to be manifested again. And these are the things that the world is made up of. Then Ishvara also makes the various pranis awake. People, animals, trees, everything that has a reflected consciousness. And it is said that Ishvara, having created the inner things outside and the possibility of the pranis, he enters into them. There's only one Chaitanya. One Chaitanya means that one conscious person, which is Brahman, which is Ishvara. And he enters into all of us. Here, Vedanta says, this is the crucial point I want to point out, the entry is in the form of pratibimba. It is as though Ishvara created the many mirrors and got reflected into them. And the reflection of Ishvara is you and I. So we are the pratibimbas of Ishvara. And the pratibimbas of Ishvara are so reflections of Ishvara. So there are two things being pointed out here. Make a note of it. One is that there is only one Chaitanya Vastu, one conscious entity. Is non-difference between you and I and Ishvara. It's only one. This is number one. The second one is that our reflections are all different from each other. If it is a clean mirror, and the cleanliness of the mirror is based on the karma of the individuals in the whole creation. And it is all carried from the previous kalpa. So the cleanliness of the mirror means that Ishvara shines through more clearly through a person. So this is what it is called, a good person and not so good person. A criminal and as a sadhu. And in fact, animals, plants, so on and so forth. So the shapes of, we're just talking about mirror as one thing, but this is an infinite number of reflecting surfaces. So now, your and my experiences, our conclusions of what is and what is not, is only possible when I have the pratibimba of Ishvara. See that? So, what it means is that if I do not have the consciousness of Ishvara flowing through me, I cannot conclude that something is or something is not. There will be no feeling whatsoever. A rock, for example, cannot say that, yes, there is a classroom going on. Cannot say that. Because there is no flowing of through a Suksma Sharira of Ishvara's Pratibimba. But you and I are the Pratibimbas, and we can see a picture. The picture may be faulty. Picture may not be perfect. We have our own subjectivity. But what is said is that only when you have a connection between the bimba of Ishvara and the pratibimba of the jiva, you can have something going on. This is pointed out, and I will continue. I'm not going to finish this today. There's a lot more to be said. This is going to be taken up. So now with this, let's reread verse number 15. Okay? Sorry, number 15, yeah. Chidanandamaya Brahma Pratibimba Samanvita Tamo Rajaf Sattva Gunaha Prakritihi Dvividha Chasa. So he says, the way the avidya works, is it gets connected with the Chidanandamaya Brahma Pratibimba. So the reflection of a live person, which is Ishvara, gets reflected, and now there is the work of avidya starts. This is the karya of avidya. So avidya means ignorance, and so ignorance has both a bija, means a seed form which is undifferentiated, and now it becomes differentiated in a very particular manner. And it hides the reality of Brahman from you. This is called Prakriti. The word Prakriti is very well explained by Swami Maheshananji. So I'll just end the class with the definition of Prakriti. And I realize that this is not a complete explanation. We will revisit it next week. But I just wanted to leave you with the very interesting definition of the word Prakriti. So, for those of you that are familiar with music in particular, will appreciate the word Kriti. So Kriti means a particular presentation of music with some ragas and perhaps some things which are repeated, some things that are the same. Then you have some side things. This is all called Kriti. Kriti means it's a spontaneous and also a creation of the artist is called a Kriti. Something very beautiful, something which is new, something which is unique is called Kriti. Many of you may have, I've now become sensitive to it because I never really was that familiar with music, but in my later years, so in Hindi they'll say, मैं आपको एक नई कृति बताता हूँ. Means I'm going to now sing a new kriti for you. Okay? So kriti means a creation. This is what it means. Kriti means a visible creation that people can appreciate. Swami Maheshananji pointed this out. He says, Prakriti means Prakarshena Kriti, means a Mahakriti, an enormous Kriti. Just like we saw that the word Laya and Pralaya. So Laya was just a sleep, whereas Pralaya is total sleep. There's a big difference. Because you and I are experiencing sleep, but to have the whole thing go to sleep is not, we cannot imagine that, but it happens. Similarly, Swami Maheshananji says, the avidya The manifestation of avidya in our life is prakriti. Prakarshena kriti. It is not an ordinary kriti. It is an enormous kriti. And such a one that it all looks very real and very orderly and just completely boggles my mind. This is why my Shraddha is tested. It looks so real, how can it go? I can't be independent of this. Not possible. Yes, because of the word Prakriti. So he says, Chidananda Brahma Pratibimba Samanvita. Samanvita means only when it is united, only when it is enjoined. That's a better word even. Endowed is a good word. Endowed or enjoined with Chidananda Brahma, the Pratibimba of the Chidananda Brahma, which we saw earlier. Then the Prakriti, which is of the nature of Tamas, Rajas and Sattva Guna, which will be of two kinds, which will come later, hasn't been explained yet. It will come in number 16 and 17. But what it means is that the ability of Ishvara's Maya Shakti, so this is Maya Shakti, this is where the Maya Shakti comes in, which is avidya. So then the distinction will come between what is Maya and what is avidya. So all that will come later on. But the topic now has been, the door to the topic has been opened, that there is a pratibandha which obstructs my own thinking to be factual. And the pratibandha is avidya, which is anadi, and which is also the nature of prakriti. So we always think about prakriti as nature, which is true. But the enormous significance of the word prakriti here means it is a creation which is amazing. So amazing that it is so powerful that it fools me. Even when I want it to go away, it doesn't easily go away. It has captured me to that exactly. It's made me a pashu. It is now, so pasha and pashu and pashupati and all of those things will be now explained. But it is a very powerful creation of the Maya Shakti called Prakriti. Beautiful way of really explaining this word, which we are familiar with, but we don't really visualize the strength of it. Anyway, I'll leave some time for questions, and we will take it up next week. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Yeah.
I have a question I'll ask in two parts.
Okay.
So this is like engineering of the Vedanta, engineering of Torah. So as I understand, it is only one Swarupa, which
Yeah.
is Ishvara.
Mm-hmm.
And it is infinite Swabhava.
Correct.
So we are one of those.
Yeah.
Right? So we are part of Ishvara, or
Yeah.
we are Ishvara, right?
Yeah, so the word part of Ishvara should not even be used.
I see.
Not be used because, I say that because part of Ishvara would mean that the Ishvara has parts. See, it gives you, so the words are important in the way we think about it. So we say that, I'm just please hold your questions, I'll just talking about that part of it. So when you say this is I'm part of that, it would mean as though Ishvara consists of many parts, just like a building consists of many bricks. Not correct. What it is that I am a certain aspect of Ishvara. I'm a reflection of Ishvara. And the reason for that is that our Srishti is from top down rather than from bottoms up. The bottoms up Srishti would be where you take each brick and you put on top of the other and put some cement in between them, and pretty soon you have a nice looking building. Ishvara Srishti is not like that. Ishvara Srishti is more like an ocean where the individual waves are not a part of the ocean. This is an important thing to see. Waves are not part of an ocean because the ocean is not made up of waves. It is a certain expression of the ocean. And it is an aspect of the ocean because the fundamental aspect of both the ocean and the wave is the same, which is the water. So it is undifferentiated aspect of it. So we are like that. Or I think the best thing to use to say we are a reflection of Ishvara. Yeah. And now that I have scolded you on that, please go back to your question.
I said that because with that answer,
Okay.
the second question maybe is not that good.
Okay, good.
So we are Pratibambha of Ishvara, right? But
Yeah.
we go through, we are subjected to karmas, and based upon that we are born again and again.
Correct.
And we experience pain. And
Yes,
happiness.
yes.
So I was trying to look at logic of it.
Uh-huh.
Why all this? If we are just Pratibambha of Ishvara, why is the need for us to go through all this?
So the fact of the matter is that the word why is not relevant to this. There's not at all. There's no logic to it at all. In fact, it is not there. See, the jiva and the pratibimbas are in reality not there. You know, so for example, the classical example we have taken is that of a rope and a snake. So one can ask, why is the snake there? What is the logic behind the snake being there? So the answer to that is snake is not there. In fact, you tell me why snake is there. And he says, I don't know, I got completely confused. So one can say, why would I be confused? I don't know. You just got confused because of your some previous experiences or something like this, whatever it is. But the logic of why it is there is only if it is there. In fact, the whole creation is not even there. And so to postulate the question of why, in fact, I would say that Swami Dayanand used to say the same thing, and other acharyas also. If you can please answer me, I can ask you a question in answer to your question. If you can tell me why is fire hot, I'll explain to you why there is dukkha, sukha, sukha, dukkha. You can say how the fire is hot, but you cannot answer why is the fire hot. Because that's part of the creation. There is no creation without karma and karma phala, samadukha. And the basic fact is that sukha dukkha actually are not there. It is just a creation on our part. And so our attempt should be, because to answer why has two problems. To even ask the question and to answer that question has two problems. One is that just like the why is the fire hot, it doesn't make any sense because you can never explain why anything is why it is. Okay, this is one problem. Second problem is you don't gain anything from it. In fact, the power of asking why is the karma and karma phala is only there as long as you see it as reality. That's the only power for it. And once you ignore it, so what it is said is that our vichara, our thinking, our inquiry, our pursuit, our learning, should not be wasted in answering the question why. The reason for that is that if you look at the genesis of the word why, the genesis of the question why, it is only there because you doubt if it is true. If it is true.
Because I've been thinking about the same issue that is being tackled here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this Panchadasi is trying to convince us about the Vedantic concepts.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm having the same problem how to accept it. So to accept something, the question why comes in. That's
Why comes in? And the question of why comes in, if a doubt creeps into your mind, if this is really true or not.
That's natural, right? It's a new thing.
Yeah, is it true or not? Because you do not accept your mind, not you, but the mind in asking the question is masking a deeper question. And that deeper question is really? Is this true? And so the vichara should be, how was this possible to begin with? And that vichara has to be answered by the question that it is a pratiti. It looks like that, but it is not there. It looks like that. Just like a snake, it looks like a snake, but it is not there. And so, and Swami Viditatmananda also had given another example which is very good. And apparently Gautama Buddha gave this example. So he says if you are going on a road and all of a sudden you have a arrow pierce your back and you are now very badly injured. At that point in time, you should not ask, why did this happen to me? Where did it come from? And who would do this to me? Who are my enemies? What happened to the guy who shot the arrow with me? Your job is to get the arrow out and get well. You can ask the questions later, but at this point in time, don't waste your time on the why of it. Get on with it. This is the answer that is given by Gautama Buddha also. And Swamiji had recited this. So this is very true. So you can set it aside. You can say, so what happens actually quite realistically is that if one has doubts about this and so on, you set it aside and go on with it, and then pretty soon you will see that the question of why also becomes irrelevant. Because the whole Prakriti has to be in the form of something which is unexplainable. You can never quite explain it. But the fact is that you don't need to explain it. You don't need to explain it. I think we have already gone through this in one of the previous classes, maybe here or some other class, I can't remember, but maybe in the Mandukya class. Yeah, I think it was in the Mandukya class. Remember we took the word vyavastha. Vyavastha. So this is exactly another form of the why, because we want to see what is the vyavastha, what is the order, how did it come about? And so there it says, don't waste your time looking at the vyavastha. Just see that it is not there. At a deeper level, it is not there. Anyway, that's a long-winded answer to that. Yeah. One short question.
Yeah, I guess. So does this mean like we just have to, you said in Vedanta we cannot have, well, it's not just blind faith, we have that question. So this cannot be answered, the basic question, like why. So does that mean like basic here we can just say, just have faith in it? That
No. So what the question you should be asking is how, not why. See, how did this come about? What is the process? So the why means that there is some kind of a hidden motivation, some agenda. This is the reason for the word why. Why is it there? You can do that for another person and say, somebody gives you a big slap and you say, why did you slap me? That's appropriate. What's the cause of it? What did I do to you? There you cannot say how. How did you slap me? So you want to show you one more time? You can't do that. So there is a reason for a why. But in this Prakriti, don't waste your time on why, because it's not going to lead anywhere. And the reason you are asking is that you don't believe me. You have no Shraddha in me. So confront that. Then you can please walk away from this class and say, no one is explaining to me. Let me go to someone else who has a better. If you go to some very learned people, they'll give you the same answer, for heaven's sake. Do not waste time looking at why. You're much more useful to look at how. How does it take place? You can go to a doctor and say, I've got an arrow in my back. How do I get it out? This is important. And what do I have to do to make sure that the wound heals quickly? Not waste the time. Why did it happen to me? There also why becomes somewhat relevant. But in this case, why will not have absolutely no utility to you at all. Don't waste your time. That's what is being said.
Causation of all this is just causation is God.
Causation is avidya. The only cause of that is ignorance. In fact, the whole creation, the paint used in the whole creation is different. In fact, that's going to come. Tamo, Rajas, Sattva, Guna. These are the three colors of avidya. These are the three colors through which the whole thing is painted. All having to do with avidya. Avidya is the basic color of the whole thing. Yeah. Okay, we'll see you next week.